37 years, man.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Meeting of the Milton Board of Zoning Appeals for Tuesday, May 16, 2023 is called to order. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 3 on our agenda this evening is introduction of members. Board members, please confirm your attendance beginning to my left.
Billy Carmen.
Laura Bentley.
Adam Danella.
Hodge Patel.
Don Kurt.
David Jackson.
And Zach Stafford is not in attendance this evening. Item 4 on our agenda this evening is approval or amendment of the agenda. I'll seek a motion and a second to approve or amend tonight's meeting agenda as published by the City of Milton.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
We've got a motion from Don and a second from Laura to approve this evening's agenda as published by the City of Milton. Is there any discussion? I'll call for a vote on the motion to approve tonight's agenda as published by the City of Milton. We had a motion by Don and a second by Laura. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The motion passes unanimously. Item 5 on this evening's agenda is approval of the past meeting minutes. I'll seek a motion to approve the April 18, 2023 meeting minutes as published by the City of Milton.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
We've got a motion from Billy and a second from Laura to approve the April 18, 2023 meeting minutes as published by the City of Milton. Is there any discussion? Seeing that there's no discussion, I'll call for a motion on the vote to approve the April 18, 2023 meeting minutes as published by the City of Milton. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay.
Abstain.
The motion passes 5-0 with David Jackson abstaining. He was not in attendance at last month's meeting. Item 6 on this evening's agenda is consideration of primary variances. The Board of Zoning Appeals is a quasi-judicial board comprised of resident volunteers of the City of Milton. The board is charged with hearing requests for variances from standards of zoning ordinance and appeals of administrative determination. With regard to the decisions on primary variances, the board's basis for decisions is provided by these 4 considerations. A, relief if granted would not offend the spirit or intent of the ordinance, and B, there are such extraordinary and exceptional situations or conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property that the literal or strict application of the ordinance would create an unnecessary hardship due to size, shape, or topography, or other extraordinary and exceptional situations or conditions not caused by the variance applicant. And C, relief if granted would not cause a substantial detriment to the public good and surrounding properties. And D, the public's safety, health, and welfare are secured and that substantial justice is done. The first primary variance this evening is V23-09, 15245 Birmingham Highway, to allow an existing structure to be a future guest house and remain in front of the proposed primary house. Michael, will you please present?
Good evening, board members.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Can you guys see?
No.
All right. One moment, please.
It's up now.
All right. The property address is 15245 Birmingham Highway.
Michael, we lost it. There it is. Okay, it's back.
Right. The property address is 15245 Birmingham Highway, and the applicant is seeking the following variance: to allow an existing structure to be a future guest house and remain in front of the proposed primary house, section 641598B5. The site is 4.3 acre parcel located on the eastern side of Birmingham Highway. The property is zoned AG1 and is located in the rural Milton Overlay District. Applicable setbacks for the lot are 60-foot front, 50-foot rear, and 25-foot side. The overall lot is sizable with a total of 4.3 acres on site. The The subject lot was created from combining two separate parcels under the Plummer minor plat in 2021, as shown in Exhibit A. The abandoned property line is highlighted in red. Subject lot was previously two parcels of 2.5 acres and 1.83 acres in size. The lot has a depth of 577 feet and a width of 669 feet, as shown in Exhibit B. The proposed guest house is highlighted in blue, as shown here. And the proposed primary location of the future single-family home is right here in green. The applicant has support from three neighbors, 15267, 15230, and 15235 Birmingham Highway. Your letter of support shown in Exhibit D. Let me circle back to the site plan. No topography details were provided on the survey. However, I concluded from the staff site visit that the lot is relatively flat overall, and the biggest drop in grade was found in the northeastern corner of the lot, right here where the state waters are located. The approximate location of the proposed primary single-family home is located completely outside of the City of Milton 50-foot understood buffer and 75-foot impervious setback. The existing single-family home was built in 1971 and is located 61.6 feet from the front property line, meeting the 60-foot front setback requirement. If the variance is approved, the future guest house is proposed to have 1,278 heated square feet and meets the maximum 1,500 heated square feet requirement, section 651598B3. Per the applicant's letter of appeal, over 100 trees and bushes were planted on the property since the applicant purchased the property in May 2022. The species include the following: bracken magnolia, green giant arborvitae, cryptomeria, holly, asmanthus, and yoshino cherry. Here's the adjacent neighbor map again, showing all three bordering property owners' support. And I believe the applicant told me he reached out to the people behind them, but they were owned by a development company, and there aren't actual single-family homes on these two lots right here. Letters of support. Here are the site photos. Here's the view to the west, which is across Birmingham Highway. And here's a view to the east, which is essentially the back of the property. And this photo really shows how flat the site really is. View to the north, facing the northern side setback, and view to the south, facing the southern side setback. Front of the guest house. Side and rear of the proposed guest house. And make my way around, you'll see the other side and rear of the guest house. Here's the approximate location of the proposed primary single-family home. And this was an estimate from staff, but we felt we were pretty close. Here are some photos from the point of view from the applicant, where he planted shrubs along and trees along Birmingham Highway. And this vantage view is from the front porch. Here's another one. And here's the opposite view from Birmingham Highway facing the future guest house. And you can see the screening. Here's a site plan showing the proposed single-family home location along with a shared driveway to the guest house. And I went ahead and scaled the site plan to show how far back the proposed single-family home is located. And from the scale provided, it's 100, there's 262 feet from here's the property line, all the way back to where the house is. That's 262 feet. And the distance from the guest house to the house is 163 feet. And I also scaled the boundary survey, and it shows the closest point is 254, and the farthest point is 321 feet, which falls in the box of what he's proposing 262 feet away. Just wanted to point that out. On May 2nd, 2023, the DRB met and had the following comments. DRB recommends approval of the variance request. The DRB wanted to acknowledge that the DRB has recommended approval of this variance request in the past to allow a guest house to be located in front of the primary house. The DRB emphasized that having architectural purview over the future guest house was important, as the structure is very visible from Birmingham Highway. The DRB also recommended additional screening along Birmingham Highway. However, the applicant stated he had already planted 100 new trees since buying the property in May of last year and had already screened Birmingham Highway thoroughly. The DRB appeared satisfied with this response, and the applicant stated he'll provide photos for the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. And all the photos I showed you earlier were from the applicant, showing the additional screening. And the recommended condition from the DRB was the future guest house shall require design review board approval, and the recommended staff conditions are per the boundary survey from Foothills Land Surveying LLC received on April 24th, 2023 by the Community Development Department, and to provide a foundation survey during the permitting process of the future guest house. Questions for staff?
So, go ahead.
Yeah, if a front porch is added to the existing structure, and I believe in the information here, it's at 61.6 feet right now is the distance, and the front setback is 60 feet. Is that allowed in the front setback? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, front porches are allowed to encroach 10 feet over a front setback, as long as they're not enclosed.
As long as they're not enclosed. Thank you.
So the DRB wants they want to have say on the future guest house. So you mean, are they talking about the current house?
They're talking about the future guest house.
Which is the current house, the
Yes.
one that's existing.
So would that recommended condition not allow him to change anything to the current house unless he went to the design review board?
No, it will allow, I mean, they want to look at the improvements that he might be proposing, so that's why they wanted
Okay,
it to come back to them, but
got it.
generally, residential properties, we don't send it to DRB, that's why we haven't recommended it.
Thank you.
Would,
That's a condition that if we wanted to add it, we could add it. It isn't a requirement.
under the circumstances of guest houses, I mean, that falls under what you're talking about residential. No matter where the guest house is located, the DRB does not see anything on those.
Correct, yeah, they do not. It's all in-house.
Michael, has the applicant had conversations with the staff or the architect in terms of improving the front facade around the porch? And can you elaborate on that a little bit further for us?
Yes, I know Mr. Turcorso had a very in-depth meeting with Bob Buscemi and Shuba, and they're proposing some additional details in the front. It's a front porch addition to give some depth to the front. So he's already met with Bob and Shuba one time, and he is proposing some elements to the guest house.
You referenced the term, it also would stay in-house. Can you just explain what
Yeah,
that
sure.
means?
Architectural purview would be Bob Buscemi and Shuba.
So that would be during the permitting process.
Correct.
Any other questions for staff?
Just to clarify then, if there is no permitting process, excuse me, I'm losing my voice here. If there is no permitting process and the DRB or Bob or somebody wanted to have improvements to bring that guest house up to the current standards, how would that be enforced? Would we have to put a condition in there to bring it up to current standards? Or I know if there's a building permit, that'll be reviewed. But supposing there is no building permit, the house is as is, and say it just wanted to stay that way, the there is no process to ask for improvements unless we put a condition in there. Is that correct?
That's a good point. Yes. If he wasn't doing an addition or any type of permitting requirement, we couldn't actually bring it back to look at it.
So it wouldn't necessarily have an architectural review unless there's a new building permit.
Correct. Yes. And we were just comfortable with it based off the meeting we had with him that he's proposing the front porch addition. But to your point, yes, you are correct.
I have a question, sorry. So, but the primary residence has, the proposed primary residence would have design review or no?
No.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Similar to the guest house, it would be Bob and Shuba, Bob Buscemi.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, to me, this seems like we've dealt with guest houses in the front before. This seems like the first time the DRB's made this recommendation, which would be something we would ask them if they're going to do it. We would want them moving forward doing the same thing if they're going to ask for it. I don't know that it's necessary because our internal staff does a good job with what they're doing and interpreting the code and handling residential development. So I don't know that it would need to do that. But my question in that regard says here that he's got architectural drawings have been received and tentatively approved by the city architect with modifications. So that's for the guest house or the main house?
Main house.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
So, but
Yeah. So
we,
the 1 hour meeting with Bob was more in depth about the proposed single family home, but he also touched on some elements he wanted to do for the guest house, but he didn't have physical plans for the guest house.
So are there, are there plans to renovate the guest house?
No, but he does have drawings and plans for the new single family home in the back.
Right. So basically the guest house could stay as is without any changes.
Correct.
Okay. So at some point, if he decided to renovate the guest house, it would come before the architectural review board, right?
It would come before staff for architectural review.
So you would put some limits on how it's to look and all that stuff, right?
Correct. Yes.
just the architectural plans that we're talking about for the main house, those, we don't have any kind of plat or site plan on those though. It's just
don't.
kind of in the works with
Correct.
with
They
the
can
city
see-
right now in the permitting department.
Yeah, we have not received a permit yet. It was just that conceptual plan that we referenced.
Okay, so
Your
that's what we're using.
Yes, right.
There's nothing new, I guess.
Correct.
Gotcha.
And I was reading, they're going to relocate the driveway. Is that correct?
Well, it looks like they're going to tie in the drive. Yes.
Well, they're curb, I
Yeah.
read that they're going to move the curb cut down further down Birmingham Highway.
Right,
So
that's
they would
correct.
eliminate the driveway that's there now.
That's correct. Yeah.
Any additional questions for staff? Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it. We'll have a combined 10 minutes for the applicant to make an opening presentation, public comment from anyone wishing to speak in favor, and a closing statement from the applicant. There'll also be 10 minutes of public comment for anyone wishing to speak in opposition. Mr. Corso, if you'd like to come forward and present your application at this time, please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Arturo Corso, and I live at 15245 Birmingham Highway. Really can't improve on Michael's presentation. It was great. There are a few fine details I wanted to clarify. For Mr. Carmen, you asked about the new curb cut driveway. Yes, I already have a permit from the state DOT to put in that new driveway. So in the site plan where you see the new driveway that's tree lined, that would be new. And it would tie into, thank you, it would tie into the existing entryway of the guest house.
Okay.
When you say eliminate the existing driveway, I want to clarify that that is true of the construction driveway, which is at the very top of this photograph. That construction driveway, which already existed when I bought the house, will be eliminated. So there's not going to be three driveways. And then the second thing that you said, Mr. Carmen, was about whether there were going to be any renovations to the guest house. In fact, The guest house has already been fully renovated inside. It's very nice. When you pull up, not so nice. But when you go inside, it's really lovely. Nice high-end finishes. It's 3 bedrooms, 2 full bathrooms, solid surface, countertops, tile everywhere, hardwood floors. It's the outside that needs some love. And so when I met with Shuba and Bob, the architect, what we talked about doing was putting a front porch on the existing guest house and kind of beefing it up with some timber supports to make it look more Milton-esque. To do that, I will need a building permit, and therefore I will have to go through staff to get their architectural approval.
Okay.
I could just answer any questions that you have, but those were the 2 that I wanted to hit on. And I wrote a 5-page letter, which is pretty comprehensive. If you'd like me to go through each point, I will. I'm certainly not going to read you the letter, which I'm sure you've already done that. But I'll just yield to your questions and then to anyone who wants to speak beside me.
Sure. Mr. Corso, one question I have for you. On the front facade, it almost looks like there's a parapet above the entry door. Is that,
I can barely hear you.
it seems like there's a parapet almost along the front facade above the door because the roof line seems like it's lower.
Yeah, it's fake. It's just
Okay.
Triangle.
a facade. Sorry, what do you call it?
Is it a triangle?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's just a tall triangle above the roof line.
It's not.
Mhm.
It's not functional.
Another question I had for you is on the site plan that we have, it's labeled as a proposed future primary residence, and it's referencing an approximate location. Michael earlier during his presentation talked about the overall distances from Birmingham Highway to the front edge of the house, which I believe was 265 feet roughly. Would you be open to some sort of condition that said you could get no closer than 240 feet to Birmingham Highway? The reason being, the site plan shows an approximate location of it, and if you slightly moved outside of that box, that would potentially create a additional requirement to come back if it's not within that site plan.
Sorry, you want to make it 240 instead of 260?
No closer than,
No closer
no
than
closer than,
240?
yeah.
No problem.
Yeah, I think, yeah. The goal is, this is not exact where the house is, and we don't want to tie you into this box.
Right.
So we want to make sure that we can keep the appearance of the home not being clustered with the guest house.
I understand. So yes, you can put a condition that says no closer than 240 feet.
I appreciate your write-up, especially the history, because you explained in the history that you are the new owners, whereas the old owners were the owners that deforested it. And that was a big day for me because they took down a huge heritage tree. So did you did the replanting, the recompense? Is that how?
Up to you did
The recompense for the property as far as putting back what was taken down by the prior owners?
So I have planted since last May 100 trees and shrubs all around the property. And most of them are along the front boundary line to try and screen the road. But we also there was a barn in the back that was like right on the property line. So we put about 15 trees back there to screen the barn from our neighbor. And we put there's another house next to me that looks like it's been damaged and under construction for a couple of years, tarps and such. So we put some trees in front of that house, and we're not done. We've got lots more trees to come.
So the barn, the big barn is on the property line, but not on your property?
Correct. It doesn't belong to me, but it's right on the line.
Yeah, it looks like it is almost. So thank you for explaining and doing the write-up on the history of the property, because it's had several owners and it helped me a lot. So my only question is on the facade of the house, yeah, I'm glad that you're working with staff, because one of the special things about Milton is the view shed. And you've been here a year, and I know that you are working to improve it, because we see all the screening. So I would encourage you to go in the direction of the Milton-esque look. And there's no one better, in my opinion, than the staff here in Milton.
They have been incredible, very kind, very thorough. I've never had so much attention. So I'll look forward to continuing to work with them.
And it's great advice, and it's free. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Corso, I've got a question for you on the timing of construction of the proposed primary residence, as well as updating the front facade of the current proposed guest house. Can you walk me through the timing on that?
Yes, it's very up in the air still. Let me tell you what I mean by that. Just getting the blueprints for the new house from the architect cost me about $75,000. I thought that was a lot of money. And I didn't want to do too much more in the way of design and drawing and providing revision drawings for the little house until I knew whether or not there was going to be a variance. Same thing with the new driveway. I don't want to pour a new cobblestone driveway until I know that we're going to have a reason for that. So it really comes down to, once the variance is either disapproved or approved, things are going to start to move a little bit more quickly. I would anticipate the new driveway going in the next 2 to 3 weeks at the most. And that'll start with at the Birmingham Road and going up to the fence line. We're not going to do the whole driveway. We're just going to do the right-of-way encroachment, because they have a time limit on, once they give you the license, they want you to do it within 90 days. So that'll happen very quickly. And then, weather permitting, we're going to see about getting a porous pavement driveway in the longest part, and then starting to do the foundation. I don't know how fast that's going to go, but my estimate would be that the whole house should be completed within 20 months of start. That's kind of what my thinking is on the timetable.
So do you see the improvements to the guest house occurring simultaneously with the construction of the main house, or prior to that?
You could say simultaneously, but it will be on the back end of the process. One of the things I'm interested in doing, not only is the porch and the timbers, but I think the roof could be designed much better. If we're going to tear off the roof and redo it to look more like the new house, I need to be living in the new house. So yes, the revisions to the guest house will come at the end of, but not very far after I get a certificate of occupancy for the new residence.
Thank you.
I have a question. I didn't get a chance to drive up there. I intended to, and I didn't get a chance to do that. But we have a straight-on picture of your house. Can you hear me? We have
Yes.
this straight-on front view of the house. As you're coming down Birmingham Highway, can you see the sides and the back where that shed-type garage is? And I can't tell from the pictures if you can see that all from Birmingham Highway or not.
There is a picture that I think is helpful.
Is it one of the ones we have?
It is one of the ones that was in Michael's presentation that I took. And that would be traveling in a, thanks, buddy. Traveling in, yeah, here we go. You see that white car?
Uh-huh.
That's my driveway. And you can see the house kind of through the trees, but this gives you a good idea of the screening of the house. I'm not trying to completely hide the house, but almost. So that question about the carport, if you back up from this point of view, say 50 or 60 feet, you could see through better in the opening, which is where the new driveway is going to go.
Okay, I know I watched the DRB, excuse me, the DRB session, and I know that was brought up about the carport, and I believe Your response was something to the effect that you wouldn't do anything with the carport?
Here's what I
Sorry.
think. I think that the volunteers on the DRB are excellent. They got a little enthusiastic. They wanted to tell me about what color I should paint the house. And they asked me generally about whether I'd be willing to enclose the carport. I've already thought of that, but the way it's built, I can't enclose it without building the roof out quite a bit further. You see my car there in the picture? It's not a big car, but it doesn't fit all the way in the carport as it is. So to enclose the carport, I'd have to change the orientation of the driveway and enter the carport from the rear of the house. And I just don't think it's really worth the expense to do that. What I will tell you is that in this picture here, you can see there's a little bit of a pine straw island there with some smaller trees kind of in the background. Do you see, looking through that gap between the magnolias?
Mhm.
That used to be a parking pad, and there were cars parked there all the time. So I dug up that parking pad and planted those trees back there. And eventually those trees, although I lost 3 of them in the freeze a few months ago, eventually that screening will completely hide the carport.
So just to follow up, sorry. So in your discussions with Bob and Shuba, then have you concentrated on the front view of the house primarily?
Precisely.
So no discussion about how it looks from the side or carport or anything else at this point?
Not at all.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Well, you were talking about taking the roof off and changing the pitch and things like that. That's probably going to entail tying into the carport, so that may get involved the way the 2 roofs tie together. So you may end up having to do something back there.
There's 2 different roofs. This is,
Yeah,
let me see. I think there's a top view. All right, see,
Yeah.
you see this picture here? The left picture?
Mm-hmm.
There's the roof, the house has a roof, and then the carport and the back porch have a roof.
But are they not connected together?
They're not.
Oh, okay. I would thought they would have been tied in together, but
If I'd have built
seems
it,
like
they
the
would have been.
carport roof is lower than the other roof. Okay, well, that explains that. All right.
But this picture here, this right picture here, shows you what I'm talking about, where the cars can't get all the way in to enclose it and make it a garage. You'd have to come in from the back, and then I'd have a 1-car garage.
I go up and down the highway all the time, and I notice the front of the house, but I don't notice back. I mean, as you're coming, like you were showing that picture when you're coming up down Birmingham Highway, you don't really, I don't notice it, the carport stands out to me. So.
No, it doesn't. I'm really familiar with this lot and the history of it, and it's a flash. And where he took the parking pad, I know exactly what parking pad he's talking about, where he filled it with new screening. I mean, that's going to take your vision. But let's be honest. I mean, when he builds his house, that's what you're going to look at, not the guest house in the front when you drive by.
I agree.
I'm not concerned with the house as it sits. I mean, you know, this is the first time we've gone in depth on any of the guest houses that we looked at, and you know, I can appreciate you working with the city to make improvements to it, which is great.
Thank you.
So I think my question really is on this kind of site plan. You know, the trees you outlined here along the driveway, I mean, is that your intent to outline that full drive like that with trees and
Absolutely.
things like that?
Absolutely.
So that would even present more screening
Yeah.
and more.
I mean, I agree. I don't have an issue with that.
That's right. Yeah. I mean,
That way.
right. It would be very difficult then and to see the side of the guest house at that point. Plus, I've seen all the new trees that you have along the front just this weekend. We were passing back and forth, and
Drive by at night. I put some lights on the
Yeah.
heritage trees.
nice. So yeah, I mean, I think by the time things keep moving, it's going to be very well screened.
Thank you. If that's the case, if everyone is satisfied, I would appreciate an approval that doesn't require a condition to go back, and just let me deal with staff, because I think we work really well together.
I would support that, especially knowing Bob Buscemi. He's going to really, I mean, when you get Buscemi, it's going to be great and Milton-esque. And it sounds like, you want to tie this guest house in nicely with your primary residence, which, that's what we're all about here. We want to keep this 4-acre parcel intact and do everything we can to support landowners like you. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Mr. Corso, if you want to hang on for one
Yes,
second.
thank you.
Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak in favor?
No,
Opposition?
no.
Mr. Corso, if you want to come back, if you have any closing statements that you want to make, you're welcome to do so. You're not required to, but if you want to, you're certainly welcome.
I really like Milton. We moved to this property about a year ago, but we lived in another house in Milton for 2 years, and I renovated that property. And it's just fun. I'm a lawyer, but I get very bored at work. And so this is I don't play golf. I don't watch football. I don't chase women. I play with real estate and remodel houses. And this is just a hobby for me. It's going to be great. You're going to like it. Thanks.
Appreciate it. Any additional questions for the applicant or for staff? At this time, I'll close the public comment and we'll open the floor for a motion in a second.
I'd like to make a motion to approve V23-09 to allow an existing structure to be a future guest house and remain in the front of the proposed primary house with the following staff recommended conditions of per the boundary survey from Foothills Land Surveying LLC received on April 24th, 2023 by the Community Development Department to be used for the location of the proposed guest house. The second condition is to provide a foundation survey during the permitting process of the future guest house. And I'd like to add a third condition that the primary residence be located no closer than 240 feet from Birmingham Highway.
I'll second that motion. For point of clarification, is it the proposed primary house?
Which condition?
The last condition?
Yes. Yes, for the proposed primary residence. Did I not say that?
Well, it says future guest house.
So the survey, the site survey is for the guest house because we need to be sure that that stays where it is on the site survey. Does that make sense?
Let me go ahead and let me just restate it. That way everybody's on the same page. So V23-09-15245 Birmingham Highway, to allow an existing structure to be a future guest house and remain in front of the proposed primary house with 3 conditions. The first condition being the boundary survey from Foothills Land Surveying LLC received on April 24th, 2023 by the Community Development Department for reference to the proposed future guest house location. The second condition is to provide a foundation survey during the permitting process of the future guest house. And then the third condition is the proposed primary house is to be no closer than 240 feet from Birmingham Highway. And so that motion was from Laura, and I had a second on that.
And
Did you want to?
I'll make some comments. I think we sense a nice working relationship between this applicant and the city. And we'd like to continue that, foster or facilitate that So that was the reason for the third condition of giving him some flexibility to move that house, but no closer than 240 feet. Obviously, going through our hardship criteria, relief if granted would not offend the spirit or intent of the ordinance. Again, we are working very hard to keep large parcels in Milton and would like to accommodate guest houses when they meet the criteria of being used for families and under the square footage requirement. I do feel that our second criteria, because this is a combo plat that cannot be separated, it is unusual in nature. So there are such extraordinary and exceptional situations, in my opinion, on this application. Relief, if granted, is not going to cause a detriment to the public. You've done a good job with getting the approval of your neighbors, and we very much appreciate all of your adjacent neighbors being in favor of this. And then finally, the public safety, health, and welfare are secured with the conditions from staff, and then also this board's additional condition of keeping the residents at least that far behind the guest house. And those are my comments.
One thing that I'll add to Laura's comments in terms of item D, which is public safety, health, and welfare, we're eliminating an additional drive on Birmingham Highway, which is a very busy road. So I feel that really helps out from a public safety and health perspective as well. The applicant did a phenomenal job with his letter of appeal in terms of outlining each of the points as well in his presentation.
I'll make some comments. I strongly disagree with the motion. I believe if this had come to us, not as the current situation, just assume this house had some minor change and came to us for a variance, I believe we would look at this with a very different circumstance, requiring architecture review, requiring it to meet current standards, because it is a house that sits 61 feet from the main road. And it seems to me we are somehow letting this go, not knowing what that house is going to look like, not knowing when it's going to be changed, and if it's going to be changed. We don't even know if that house there's no requirement that that house meet current architectural standards. Say the applicant decides, I'm not going to do anything with that house. There's nothing that we're requiring to say that that house ever has to be brought up to standards. Yes, you're working with staff, and no slight to the staff, but there's nothing right now that requires this applicant to upgrade that house to current architect. There's suggestions and this intent that he has in working with the staff, but there is no requirement to upgrade that house to current architectural standards. So unless he goes for a building permit, which may happen, then there would be that consideration. And I trust you. I'm not suggesting that you're not going to do what you said to the applicant. But things change. You know, the big house gets bogged down. The new guest house stays the way it is for 10 years. I mean, I don't know. I believe that we should have included a condition that says it needs to come up with, needs to meet current architectural standards, and I don't see what's wrong with having it go back to the DRB. I think you all may have watched it like I did, and I had a sense that the DRB was not happy. They looked at the carport, they looked at other things, and they specifically asked for the chance to, I think they put it to have another chance to review this guest house, is I think the way they put it. And I thought that was stated fairly strongly. So I'm not in agreement with this, but that's just my 2 cents.
I'm going to just comment that we've gone through quite a few guest houses and other things that, basketball court, that did not go through a DRB review, that didn't even get permitted, but, were allowable. And under the circumstances, if we're going to start this with this guest house, because I can think of at least 2 other ones that we did not even make, that were in, I know this house, and I know it much better than the other houses that we were allowed to have guest houses. but we didn't make those requirements. If that's something we're going to do going forward, we have to do it with every single one going forward. I can't, I'm not disagreeing with you. If the DRB is going to look at it outside of, the city staff, then everyone needs to do it. If this is the first one that goes through, that's fine. But we have not done that in the past, and I have a problem with that. And this house was built in the 70s. I don't mind the house driving up and down Birmingham Highway, looking at it compared to other houses that I've seen and calling that Milton-esque. It's not what current people think maybe Milton-esque, but it's been there longer than they have. So, the idea of what makes Milton now versus what Milton was, 50 years ago, there's different design and styling. I think that if, the city process is, to get a permit to do changes. If this house stays in its condition, I think it looks and feels good on this piece of property. Just as it has for the last 50 years. But, if he wants to make changes, then, every residential house goes through the application and architectural process. Commercial goes to DRB, and they put them through the ringer most of the time. I don't know, is the DRB going to go through every residential change for variances? I don't know if they will do that but my point is that if we say that we are going to do it or make that a condition, if we are going to make it a condition, then it needs to be a condition that the DRB is aware of. It needs to move forward in that direction for all the residential properties. And, we have some of the ones that we didn't address before, we will be addressing again, moving forward, is the way I think is the most fair. Because I think that would open us up to issues with, certain variances and people filing lawsuits against the city for us not requiring something like this. So, I'm not, my concern is kind of why they felt so strongly about the design of the house, for one. But two, if they want to approve the changes, then I'm okay with that. I guess the question really is, should it be a requirement, but it was built in the 70s that, in Milton. So what is Milton-esque in our opinion or the DRB's opinion? I don't know the answer to that question.
Well, this did go through a DRB review. And I
Right.
guess it was required to as a courtesy review.
Right.
So this isn't a change that the DRB, that this suddenly we're saying the DRB needs to review all houses and then we're going to set a precedent. I mean, it did. It did go through the DRB review. I took from that they weren't satisfied with what they were presented as to what was going to take place with this guest house. That's how I took it. And they asked, they wanted, I think the word was another shot or something like that at reviewing this. And I'm not, I've never stood up for the DRB before, and this is not anything I have with them, and certainly nothing against the staff, but I just took it from watching that they had a concern. And I don't see what would be so wrong in having it go back through them with getting their comments on what the changes should be, and just have that done as an input. I mean, I don't think it's a precedent-setting thing, and it's no slight to the staff, but
So I appreciate your comments too. I just, I'm trying to work with the applicant with his timeline and investing significantly in Milton. And I fully understand you have to have your residents ready to go to do work on the second residence because of the roof lines. And so, I understand that it's in the view shed and we want it to be, Milton-esque. For me, and this is personally, and I'm going to roll the dice with this applicant that he is going to tie this in nicely with his residence that is quite an investment. So, and not conditioning it to go back to the DRB to further add to his timeline is something that I did think through before making that motion. Because I want to be I want to have less government oversight on these larger parcels.
Yeah, the applicants, before he even came to us, he's already planted over 100 trees. He's worked on his design elements elsewhere on the property in terms of consolidating the driveways, working on his initial architectural design. He's already submitted plans or shared plans with the city architect. So he's headed down the right path. He's committed to us that he was going to work with the city at some point during the process, but really after that, his primary residence is completed, and go back and address the front elevation.
And that
I'm
time-
confident and comfortable that he's going to hold up to that.
Well, maybe y'all can answer the question, y'all can jump in, but basically, at this point, if we were to make this a condition, right? The guest house would go to the DRB, the main house would not. So he would be getting input from one that may be required, and then he could do something completely different. Is the city staff going to then work with the DRB to mesh the two homes together with the same look and feel? Or does the city architect get to have the final say so over what the DRB is requiring on a guest house?
DRB is
Because
recommending
the
body.
DRB is not going to comment on the main house.
Either way, DRB is a recommending body. The city, the department head is the final decision maker on permitting and architectural review.
Okay. Okay, so that makes sense.
The city architect's the final say.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, my final comment would be, I hope we're treating this as we would treat any other piece of property, not looking at it just because it's a large piece of property that it gets treated differently.
We've got a motion and a second on the table for V2809. I'll read through it and we'll take a vote on it. V23-09-15245 Birmingham Highway, to allow an existing structure to be a future guest house and remain in the front of the proposed primary house. That motion was made by Laura, second by Hodge, with 3 conditions. The first condition is that per the boundary survey from Foothills Land Surveying LLC received on April 24th, 2023 by the Community Development Department. Second condition is to provide foundation survey during the permitting process of the future guest house. And the third condition is to propose, and the third condition is to propose primary house to be no closer than 240 feet from Birmingham Highway. I wanted to clarify the first condition, and that was in reference to the future guest house for site plan purposes. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay.
Nay.
The motion passes 5-1. Thank you, Mr. Corso. Please continue to work with the city staff and the city architect.
Well, thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thank you. Item 7 on our agenda is consideration of primary appeals, secondary variances.
None?
Item 8 is old business.
None.
Item 9 is new business.
Also none.
Did you want to talk about the meeting next month, that we don't have one?
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know if that falls under new business.
No, absolutely. Yes, we did not get any submittals, so you all are free in June, 4 weeks from now.
And
Thank
then-
you.
Any idea what July is going to look like at this point?
We've had
It's
4
early.
pre-application meetings, so spread that out over maybe July or August. So there are some in the pipeline.
And item 10, is there anything else? Michael, okay. Item 10 on our agenda.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
We get a motion from Adam and a second from David to adjourn. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Nice job.